Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Internet Flight Rules. You join us aboard the PMDG 737 in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, where we've experienced a dual engine failure, probably because I ran out of fuel. I was trying to see how fast I could get from the airport up to flight level 140 using the PMDG. I was actually able to break through 410 and make it much closer to 50,000 feet. As we are in the dual engine failure mode now, or the phase, we are gliding, making our way towards Salt Lake City here in the United States. Not actually sure if the aircraft would be vaping, considering neither engine is working. Yes, they're windmilling because we're going through the air, but perhaps some of you experts on the subject would like to let us know, but I doubt we would be vaping. My plan is to... I've got a custom waypoint in for runway 34 right and then 34 right. The reason I have a custom waypoint in and not using the regular approach for runway 34 right is I've given myself, as you see there, a 4-degree glide path, and that's because I've got no engines. I'm figuring if I can make that first waypoint, and you see the height there, 8,529 feet, I reckon if I get there with the 4 degrees, I'll be able to make it to runway 34 right. At least that's the plan. Unfortunately, I've got no... Not even that the autopilot doesn't work, but I've not even got the display for the autopilot. And so I can't actually set myself up for 8,500 feet and see a nice green arc to sort of guess that I'm getting there. So instead what I'm trying to do is... Oh, there we do actually see the green arc, but I've got no way to influence the height at which that green arc is set at. See here as I'm moving the dial around, it makes no change here. We've got 110,000 and that is all. Yeah, so being incredibly light, without fuel, I've got very few passengers. Even though I don't have a green dot speed unlike the Airbus, I do know that green dot speed is going to be very low. And it's going to be actually much lower than this. It's probably going to be about 190 knots, I reckon, at the most. But looks like with 40 miles to go, we're still at 31,000 feet. So this is actually gliding incredibly well. I'm kind of surprised just how well. Losing about 1,000 feet a minute, quite stable there. Of course, as soon as I mention it, that then drops to 1,500. Probably a bit of headwind dropping off there, but I'm just guessing. So I think what I'm going to do is just trim the aircraft down some, because I don't think there's any need to conserve energy as much as I was doing before I hit record. VOR2 is a no-go, so we'll turn that off. And VOR1 is tuned for the ILS. I did have the Navigraph charts up. I just find that little bar annoying, but more annoying is dialing it in every time. There we go. So we're making our way. Here we are to Salt Lake City. I was just interested in the... There's a VOR beacon. What we got here? 1660. Let's have a look on that one. Make that active. And there it is. Do we actually have ability to... We can't even change the course style. So we're locked in here, which is not necessarily great. So I'm going to go ahead and change this back to the airfield VOR 1680. 1680 and the ILS 10950 was set ahead of time. And again, not really that we can follow it, but we can use it for lateral guidance. All right, so let's get rid of that. In fact, I'm going to get rid of it altogether. Don't actually have the distance measuring equipment, but we are tuning in the airfields, and we can see on the FMC they were about 40 miles to go. We're still at 26,000 feet. That means plenty of height, although remember the Salt Lake City is 4,000, about 200 feet above sea level. So we mustn't get to 10,000 feet, think we still got 10, and suddenly panic and think, shit, actually it's more like 5. But with all of this extra height, again, I feel confident that we can trim down a tad, get a bit more airspeed on. More airspeed equals more parasitic drag, which is fine because we've got lots of energy to lose. Roughly got 20,000 feet to go and a little under 40 miles to do it in, so I'm going to trim down even more. I will then remember to trim up. Obviously my electric trim switches do not work. Just so we've got a number in for landing, and again, very light numbers here. I'm going to go for, well, again, the flaps won't work anyway, but just so that we have a number, I'm going to put the 115, and I'm going to put 15 knot, 115, yeah, go on. But then put 15 knot correction, and it's not that I'm bothered for the wind, it's just so that I've got something to shoot for. And what we'll try and do is on final, if I've got a spare moment, I'll trim this back and start pushing the yoke forward. Because we have no flaps, as we get near the runway, I'll be then relying on that trim wheel, seeing as I don't have someone next to me to start trimming back. But for now, let's trim down even more. There is still a little question in my mind why both engines conked. Again, I was making my way towards 50,000 feet, so I'm thinking either the fuel was run out already, even though it still reads a little bit there, or I was so high and it was so cold that the fuel froze, or I was so high, the air was so thin that the engines were unable to stay lit. And so those are my top 3 guesses. If anybody knows more than I do and can hammer home why that may have been, do let us know. But without knowing for sure, I'm going to throw my hat in for one of those 3. So about to come through the flight levels, we'll change over to local, and I did depart from Salt Lake City. It's not actually saved what the pressure was, but that doesn't matter because I think we can use Navigraph here. Salt Lake City information, airports, weather, and apparently 3033. 3033 is set. Winds are 330 at 9 knots. Temperature 1 degree. Okay. Still away with that once more. I'm going to put this on the vertical situation display mode. And with about just 20 miles or so from the field, slightly less, we've still got over 10,000 feet. What I'm going to do, start trimming back and go for the first hold. I'd rather do 360s when I know I've got loads of height left, rather than being closer and you're at that annoying height where you think, well, I'm too high to go in, but I don't know if I've got enough height left to make a turn. Yes, we're well past the 30-degree angle, but I won't be the first one to say that's not really important at this stage. Whoa, sorry for that. Just using the mouse wheel to pull the trim back. I'm going to pull back on the stick a bit as well. Get a bit more roll on once more. Not quite 45 degrees, but we're pretty much there. Their speed's pretty slow, so it's fine. If anybody knows how many G's a 45-degree angle of bank gives in level of flight, do let us know. I think it's pretty much a standard thing across any aircraft. And again, best glide is typically flaps up speed plus 5 or 10 knots. So we'll assume that we see flaps up is about 178. So we'll go for about 185 to 190 as being the best glide. And that's what we're going to trim for. So we've got just under 10,000 feet to go, and we can see the airfield there off our left hand side is about 15 to 20 miles away. So I think what I'm going to do is make a nice S-turn towards the airfield. Do see there is some terrain in the area. I was just wondering if terrain will appear. Yes, it will. Seen as nothing was showing weather-wise. Not sure that you'd have the energy to run a weather radar anyway. Terrain is not a radar, but an onboard database, the GPWiz database. Looks nice in the snow. Right, let's make our way in. And remember that waypoint we'd set ourselves up for there, 8,500 feet, and actually can see where we're going to end up based on our current angle of dangle. And so, actually not bad at all. So we know flaps, it's going to be manual braking. I will arm the spoilers on the off chance that there's anything there. I doubt it. Gear's going to have to fall under its own weight. No guarantee it's going to lock in, but whatever it does, it does. And we're going to have to hold that in for as long as possible. I'm going to trim back a tad now as we're getting close to final. Our custom fix, I give myself a 10 nautical mile final at 4 degrees, like I said. And that was just so that I had a very clear reference point to aim to. And as you can see, it looks like I'm going to make it. I don't recall if I've done dual engine failure on Flight Sim 2020 or not before. Certainly done it in X-Plane. So I'm not really sure how well the energy holds or whether it bleeds off quickly. I have to say that the aircraft feels... It feels like I'm running on rails versus X-Plane. It just flies completely smooth. There seems to be very little swaying, lumps and bumps. And when there is this much wind around all these hills and mountains, I would expect there to be some sort of wave lift or ridge lift, as some people call it. In any case, there's the waypoint, and I've gone through it a little higher, which is fine because I can just do S-turns or a bit of slip. And runway in sight. All three of them, in fact, but we're aiming for the centermost one there. So it's immediately obvious to me now that the energy is going to hold, like no question about it. So I guess I could slip, but at this distance I think I'm going to do S-curves. What I don't want to do is put the gear down early, think I've got all this energy, and suddenly find out, no I don't, the gear's done me more drag than I thought, because as soon as that happens, it's over. You can't put that back in. But seeing as there is a mechanical connection between the control column and the ailerons, unlike Airbus, I can put this stick side to side all day long, providing I don't fall asleep myself. And I don't need to rely on hydraulics. Let's do away with the terrain and we'll zoom this in. That there is actually very helpful, seeing where we're going together with the runway, seeing as I can't change anything here. Which is, you'd think even though it's the display's not on that, I'd be able to manipulate this number here, but I can't. Again, useful to be able to move that green arc to where I want it to be, which is, I would set it for the ground height actually, which is, as we say, about 4,200 feet. So here's another S-turn. And again, I'm just looking at that VSI and looks like we're fine. I guess the signs can come on. Assuming there's any power left to do that. In terms of external lighting and that, we can forget it. All the power I need is to keep my instruments going. So we're getting close now. So I want to start lining up with my runway, and if I still have a bit of excess speed, put on a little bit of slip. So I'm going to put on left rudder and keep this turned to the right. Some may call that forward slip or side slip. Either way, it creates excessive amount of drag. And I'm getting close to the point where I'm confident with the gear. So I'm going to dump the gear and I'm going to start trimming back and then push the stick forward a bit. And now I'm going to have to look where I'm going. We do actually have 3 greens, which is great. I'm still putting slip on the other rudder now. So I'm coming in way fast here. It's a long runway. No flaps though. I'm putting the boards up. There's the touchdown. And I've got to squeeze the brakes, and again I've got no hydraulic pressure being added into the brakes here, so I don't want to squeeze it too many times. Let go for a bit. They're obviously going to be hot. Squeeze them again. Actually doesn't appear to be simulated. This indicator should be dying because there's nothing adding hydraulic pressure into the brakes now. Squeeze it again. And there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Salt Lake City. And that's it. Dead stick landing in the British Airways PMDG 737-7 here, Flight Sim 2020. Hope you found that enjoyable. Certainly keeps you on your toes if you're flying it, I can tell you. And until next time from me on Internet Flight Rules, take care, ta-ra.